Good morning, everyone. As I'm starting this off, I just realized I put on another black shirt. I have like 2 weeks worth of black shirts. I am changing. I guess I need to pick a different color next week. It's t-shirt weather, it's hot. I've even got my tank tops, which I might wear, although maybe for the video I should be a little bit more formal. Since I'm doing these in the morning, it's starting off the morning early with around 72, 75 degrees. Get up to 90 or something close to that today. It's not too hot for coffee yet. Okay, well, we're going to have a little history lesson. Because like the old adage says that if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. We're going to be repeating some bad history here in a little bit. As we know from Genesis, if you're for Israel, God likes you. If you're against Israel, God doesn't. The United States is in big trouble. We'll get to that in a second. But right now we want to focus on the first 2 or 3 centuries. Christians were almost eliminated. And we'll get to that in a bit as well. But we're going to look at some of the early Roman leaders, find out about some of these people, and just kind of see how history is getting ready to repeat itself. Okay. We know that there was Julius Caesar. If you're familiar with Shakespeare, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lived after them, but the good is oft buried with their bones. Won't bore you anymore with that. But Julius Caesar was assassinated by one of his close friends. Et tu, Brute? It seems like the first 25 or so Roman emperors were eliminated in office. It's not a good place to be. It's a power position. And these people believed in taking by force. That's what the Roman Empire was all about, going out and taking by force. So it applied internally as well. So when we hear the name Caesar, it's referring to Julius Caesar, who was one of their revered and well-known leaders. So the term Caesar was actually adopted later on and applied to other emperors as a term of endearment, if you will. It derives from the Roman dictator Julius Caesar. The surname is a title used by the Roman emperors to around 70 AD. Okay. So we know that Tiberius was the emperor of Rome from AD 14 to AD 37. At that, we're talking about the time of Jesus. Pontius Pilate was the governor of Judea. He wasn't an emperor. And a lot of our stories where we hear about Paul, when he's being persecuted, demands to go to Rome. And they said in Acts they were going to release him. But because he petitioned to go to Rome, they had to do that. They had to follow through with that. As a Roman citizen, he was entitled to it. Didn't save him. And we know that Peter eventually got to Rome, and that's where he was crucified. So Rome was not a good place. I've talked about this before. Their belief was that there were multiple deities. I mean, we have our days of the week. We have a number of things named after their so-called gods. And they were so anxious to please all the gods that they even had an unknown god, and that's the one that Paul claimed when he got to town. I represent the unknown God. What they didn't like was that the exclusivity of having one God. Do I have an armadillo right outside my tent? Yep, there he is. You've seen enough of these. Oh, is that a... Thought I saw a big spider, but it's not. It was a leaf caught in a spider web. All right, it's nature, so don't worry about it. Caligula, which was his cousin, succeeded Tiberius as emperor of Rome, and they were called precepts or first citizens. We often translate that as emperors. Okay. See, these naming conventions and translations, there's so much can be lost in translation. And Caligula was like the third out of the first of the five that had the, they called it the Julio-Claudian emperors, because they all had that same basic style and adopted the naming convention. It's sort of like our Pope takes on the names of others, you know. It's a tradition in Rome to do that. So we're going to look at, let's see, we got, start off with Augustus in, I guess it was BCE. I don't like that terminology. BC, before Christ, 27 to AD 14. Okay. So start off with him, Tiberius, from 14 AD to 37 AD, where he was killed. Caligula, was kind of in there helping, and he made it till 41. Claudius, from 41 to 54. Nero comes in here at 54 to 68. Nero's the one that basically made it sport of Christians. There was so much debauchery going on. He was drunk and allowed parts of Rome to burn. Well, that was going to get him kicked out of it. That was going to get him assassinated. So what's he do? He blames the burning on Christians. It's typical. We're seeing it today. They're blaming Israel for what Hamas is doing. Blame your enemy for things that are going on. It doesn't matter whether it's true or not. It's lies. The devil gets in there and it's all lies. And then we have Galba, Otho, and Vitellius, all in 69. They couldn't keep anybody in there, and there was, you know, not too much longer there's going to be a major split. But we'll keep going. We're going to jump ahead now to 284 AD. Diocletian. He is the biggest, baddest destroyer of Christians. He thought it was his calling from God, his gods, to eliminate the Christians. And he spent his entire time doing that. He actually retired in 305, 284 to 305, because he thought he had eliminated all the Christians. He couldn't find any more to kill. He's also the reason we don't have any first century manuscripts. He had all the Bibles collected and burned. Now, they had to go through and take these things apart and hide pages, and then come back and put them all back together eventually. But he was probably the worst one. There was persecution and killing of Christians from, Jesus on. But he probably killed more than anyone. And he retired thinking he'd eliminated them. He was wrong. In 313 AD, there was an agreement to treat Christians benevolently within the Roman Empire. Constantine basically set up, we're going to accept all religions, including Christians. That's not completely the end of the persecution. It probably went on until about 400 AD, but it was the beginning of the end of it. And the great fire that destroyed Rome was in 64 AD. So he didn't have too much longer to reign, but he would have been eliminated that day if they'd known that it was his reason for doing that. Now, you think we're safe today? Things have changed in the last 100 years, but they haven't changed that much. According to the 2024 World Watch list from Open Doors, an advocacy group, around 5,000 Christians are killed for their faith each year. Today, this year, this list was put up and updated. They've been doing this for some time. That's about 13 per day are killed for their belief. Now, it's based on estimates, and a lot of times we don't know. They'll be creating a highway or a subdivision, and they'll dig up a mass grave where a bunch of Christians were buried. Even the atrocities of World War II, we're not 100% sure of the exact number. But when they say 7 trillion, 7 million, no, it's not going to be 7 trillion. That's the end. 7 million Jews killed and roughly 7 million others. They may be off by, a few thousand or tens of thousands, but with a number that big, being off by 1 or 100,000 is not a big deal compared to the fact that it is such a large number. So we've had targets on our back for a long time, and we still do. We've been blessed in this country. It was founded as a Christian nation. All the forefathers were Christians. The degree of which we can debate, but they were Christians. All right. Back in 2022, they estimated it was close to 6,000 Christians killed, up from about 5,000 in 2021. So we've actually come down a little bit. Isn't that great? I got the squirrels now playing around me. But the United States is in big trouble. Biden is meeting with the guy that just quit the Israeli government. Well, he's not meeting with him, but he's sending his people, who's no longer in office, so why are they having a meeting? To discuss how to overthrow Netanyahu. Netanyahu's fighting for Israel's survival. Biden doesn't want that, or at least his puppet controllers don't want that. They don't want any country having self-control, I guess. They're going to want this whole world government to all bow down to the Antichrist. They can't have any leadership. And they're toppling countries around the world right now. Spain is one of the recent ones that's bought into saying that they're going to recognize Palestinians with their own state. Where are they going to put it? Right smack in the middle of where Israel exists? The Palestinians want a one-state solution. Kill all the Jews, wipe them off the face of the earth, and they will take over their land. When before Israel moved in, the Palestinians wandered through that area. They didn't do any development. They didn't do any farming. They didn't do anything. All the improvements that you see are because of Israel and all the work that they've done. But the Palestinians will be happy to kill off all the Jews and take it, and the United States is getting firmly behind them. God, please don't attack the United States until you remove the Christians. There are a lot of us here. There are a lot of Christians around the world. The Muslims are basically taking over North Africa. They're taking over many countries around the loop of the Mediterranean. France is struggling with them. Germany's struggling with them. Major countries are struggling with them. South America, yeah, well, they're all crazy anyway down there. They've always been into everything against the United States, so friend of an enemy. We are in big trouble. Now, I'm not just saying this because we're backing Hamas, who doesn't really exist. The Palestinians don't really exist. It's a made-up name. I've covered this before. But this is the reason that we're in big trouble. Our dollar, well overspent. $34 trillion and rising. And we're trying to give more money to Ukraine and no money to Israel. Now, they couldn't completely get away with that in an election year. They had to give them some. But I believe if it doesn't change, we will basically declare war on Israel, along with the rest of the world. Is it going to change? I don't know. The people that are currently in charge will do anything. They will kill anybody in any numbers necessary to stay in power. Because it's the harlot. The harlot is taking over the world, and they've basically almost destroyed the biggest nation in the world, the United States. Yesterday was the last day of our agreement with Saudi Arabia that they buy, or that they sell their oil with U.S. dollars. Now, they said a long time ago, about 3 or 4 months ago, that they were going to take other dollars, not just the U.S. dollars. Way too fast. 20 miles an hour, people. Car that just flew by. The agreement that we had with them that they would take our dollars ended yesterday. They could come back and say, look, we don't like what you're doing. You cannot buy from us in U.S. dollars because your U.S. dollars are worthless. They haven't collapsed yet because everything is artificially inflated here. All the numbers that the government has given you through their puppetry media are lies. Our unemployment is ridiculously high. Just try to go to the market and buy stuff. The prices earlier this year were up 25% from last year. It's a woodpecker. I'm getting a headache just listening to them. They're looking for grubs. Well, I guess they didn't find what they're looking for, so they're going to go speeding back by the other way. Yeah. They don't patrol it very well. It's hard to in a state park. They assume most people are reasonable. The assumption should be that most people are unreasonable in this day and age. So anyhow, our buying power for oil is ended. Now we wait and see what the Saudis decide to do. We're getting closer to an election. And they're not going to let it happen. They're either going to have an election very similar to the last one, where they will stay in power. If they don't think they can pull that off, something else will happen. And I personally believe, because enough states put in some rules and controls so that they can't do what they got away with last time. Itty bitty spider climbing up inside my tent. Oh well. Bugs won't survive in my tent. There's nothing to eat. Because I don't allow critters in here. All right. How are we doing on time? I can't tell. I think we're good. So you need to continue prepping. If you haven't been, start today. Everything you can afford to buy food-wise, you should have enough food to last for at least a month, maybe 3. I don't know the day of the rapture. Nobody does. And things are getting bad. If you just started prepping when I told you to start prepping a year or 2 ago, you'd be saving money now. You'd still be buying at the current rate. And if you recycle your goods like you're supposed to, you'd be eating food that might be half as much as what the current prices are. Prep now. We don't know when we're leaving. And as I've said, we're leaving at the last minute. We're not leaving when things are good. Things are going to be bad. That's why we're being snatched away. Pre-trib rapture, it's a definite. When? There's so many things point to this year. Now, we've been wrong before. Just so you know. But it looks like this year is a good year for it. Because major things are going to happen this year. Russia also just declared the United States an enemy. This is the first time they've done that. We are not just somebody who's disagreeable. We're considered an enemy to Russia for helping in the Ukraine war, for helping the Ukrainians, who we have no interest in at all. I think they said that Bill Gates owns 75% of the farming land in the United States. And he thinks you shouldn't be eating cows. And one of the commentators pointed out, this guy who looks out of shape with a small pot belly is telling us that we need to live better and eat better. His power has gone to his head. I'm sorry to say that I supported him early on when he was working at Microsoft. But he was never the technical genius Paul was. He was good at negotiating. All right. Be safe. Don't do something because you think God wants you to do something. Do something because you know God wants you to do something. That way He's with you. If He's with you, He'll protect you. If you go off on your own, He may or may not protect you, depending on what you're doing. And try not to sin as much as possible. It prevents the Spirit from working fully in us when we sin. And we all sin. Everyone. I heard a joke. I don't know if I can remember it. I just heard it. Billy Graham, this is the joke. Billy Graham was like 87 and he was arriving from the airport and he was about to get into his limousine. And he goes, you know, I've never driven a limousine. And the chauffeur goes, well, go ahead, you can drive for a little bit and then I'll finish. And so Billy Graham gets in the seat and the chauffeur gets in the back and he's driving along. And he's going a little fast because he's not used to driving it. And a cop sees him and pulls him over. And he gets out of his car and walks up to the door and looks in, sees who it is, and says, I'll be right back. He gets back to his car and he calls his supervisor and tells his supervisor that he's got a dignitary here. What's the rule on dignitaries? Who do we let slide if we catch them speeding? And the supervisor goes, well, who is it, the governor? No, bigger than the governor. Who is it? The president? No, bigger than the president. The supervisor goes, bigger than the president? Who can it possibly be? And the cop goes, well, I don't know, but, Billy Graham's the chauffeur, so I'm assuming it's Jesus in the back seat. Nice, fun, clean Christian joke. Till we meet in the clouds, people. God bless.